Good evening. John Augustine here. A short story. I read it there a few evenings ago, written by Anthony Francis Hughes, and it was in the December issue of Alive magazine, a free magazine distributed in our churches, and very good at times, and sometimes not so good. But it was good at this particular time. It's a short story. I read it and I think it's worth repeating again. I know it uplifted me and brought a tear to my eye for some reason. Pat Joe eased his large frame through the doorway of the small stone cottage as the first snowflakes of the new year came wafting down and settled on the frozen earth. The snow that had been threatening to come all day had finally arrived at nightfall. The hearthstone beckoned. Some dried twigs crickled to life, and flames' shadow danced slowly along the kitchen walls. Outside, the wind, which had been virtually non existent all day, was ever increasing in strength. Like our gale here when the lights all went out. The sound of the water cascading over the mini waterfall on the big river which ran by the back of the cottage faded as the gusts became more frequent. Pat Joe had seen it all before. A blizzard was on the way. He applied the two heavy iron bolts that were fixed to the inside of the door, placed a lighted candle in the window, and sat down between it and the fire. The two sources of light afforded him a chance to read. It was about the only pleasurable activity he indulged in now. In truth, his pastime was more a means of escape, a way to forget a brief respite from the seemingly never-ending sadness that shattered his every thought. Sadness. Try as he might, the cause of his torment was never far away. The adjacent woodlands where he worked offered no reprieve. The crashing sounds of water upon rock penetrated the stillness of the forest, ever reminding. He struggled to come to terms with the emptiness within the cottage and the emptiness within himself, but to no avail. Those who knew him had long since labelled him a recluse. Moonlight had come and gone, but the ferocity of the snowstorm had only increased. Pat Joe ignored the knock on the door, and the second knock also. He was hearing things, he thought. He never had any visitors, but he was too far off the beaten path for any stranger to come calling. Regardless, nobody would venture forth on such an awful night. In tandem with the wind, the knocking became more persistent and more intense. Pat Joe could ignore the loud banging no longer. We saw the candle in the window, the tall, bearded stranger said. I, my wife and child are in dire need of shelter. He added, we are cold and hungry, in need of warmth and food. We carry no money or worldly goods upon our person, but if you should help us, we shall in time repay your hospitality. Pat Joe hadn't had a visitor to his home in 15 years. Wasn't that lonesome? Oftentimes, you don't have visitors. I don't have too many. I have a cousin and he comes, but they had a lot of damage to their back garden, small garden, and they had these trees, these conifers, and the back wall was knocked down, the place was nearly destroyed, and the side wall was going in sideways. So they got a quotation for over 10,000. And the trees that were conifers they were taken out by a firm from Carnaross, cost them 2,500. So a lot of money for about 5 or 6 trees. They had already fallen down, so they were taken down, but they didn't fall out, they fell in. They should have been never there in the first place. Uh, in truth, he actually discouraged social visitations. He preferred to be alone, to read or to wallow in misery and curse his misfortune. Tonight, however, was different. There was almost 2 feet of snow on the ground, and the 3 poor wretches standing on the front of him were in need of help. He would make an exception for once. You are welcome, he said. Welcome to share the fire, and welcome to whatever food there is in the house. Pat Joe lived a frugal existence. He carried no great store of food. All, however, ate their fill, and there was plenty left over. As the night wore on, Pat Joe warmed more and more to the strangers whose complexions and attire were at variance to what he was accustomed to. I am the woodsman of this here estate, he informed them. Planting trees, pruning, and felling form part of my work. We have something in common then, said the tall stranger. I too work with wood, for I am a carpenter by trade. You never took a wife, said the woman in a manner that sounded more like a statement of fact rather than the question it was meant to be. Pat Joe took a deep breath. For 15 years he hadn't shared his grief with a single living soul. 15 years ago, this very morning, my son was born, he said. We named him John Joe after my own father, who too was a keeper of the woods. Our precious son was but 3 years old when the big river claimed him. My beloved Kathleen, good Lord's name, in a vain attempt to save our child, perished too. With every awaiting these past 15 years, I have relived and cursed that very day. I fear my living nightmare shall never end. My faith in the Almighty has been severely tested. As for celebrating Christmas, the little child who had remained silent all night spoke at last. Your wife and son are not dead. They are but sleeping. And then it was the bearded stranger turned to speak for one last time that night. My name is Joseph, he said, and my wife's name is Mary. And if my son says your wife and child are not dead but only sleeping, then what he says is true, and in time shall be. Kathleen's gentle shaking brought Pat Joe out of his slumber. It's morning, Pat Joe, she said. You fell asleep at the fire again last night. I think I'll have to make up a bed for you down here, she chided. When you call John Joe for Mass, don't forget to wish him a happy 18th. Come to think of it, you too can call him sooner rather than later. We'll have to set off for church earlier than usual because of the heavy snowfall. Pat Joe released the 2 bolts of the heavy dog door. Had it all been a dream, he suddenly asked of himself. The birds of the air had left their prints on the freshly fallen snow. The fox, the stoat, the rabbit, the badger, and the squirrel had left their marks too. God's creatures were all about. The evidence was plain to see. Plain to see also were the 3 sets of footprints that Pat Joe had set out to find. It was the morning of January the 6th. Pat Joe prepared for Mass, prepared to celebrate Little Christmas, the feast of the Holy Family. In church, he would, on behalf of a small family who lived in a woodcutter's lodge on the banks of the big river, offer a prayer of thanksgiving to the three strangers. Bring tears to my eyes. It's bring tears to use. I find these stories moving because I picture them. I picture Mary, Joseph, the Blessed Virgin, and baby Jesus called on that night. Lovely, isn't it? I'll sing a little hymn now. After this, I'll just reflect for a bit. That's a story I think worth repeating now and again because it reminds us of what we are and who we are. I have a little, thing here, little feet of a 10-year-old child that was taken by a doctor, a 10-week-old baby in the womb. Perfect feet formed. And I'll just read it. In the early 1970s, Dr. Russell Sarko wanted to show the humanity of the unborn. To do this, he took a striking photo of the perfectly formed feet of a 10-week unborn child. This was published worldwide, and in 1974 it inspired Mrs. Virginia Evers to create the Precious Feet label pin, identical in size and shape to an unborn baby's feet at just 10 weeks after conception. They are used by millions of people worldwide to demonstrate the humanity of the unborn, and they're perfectly formed. It is absolutely disgraceful for children to be aborted when they're so perfectly formed at 10 weeks. Shows you the misery of the deluded governments, deluded media, and deluded people that support such evil. They need to repent, otherwise to be in eternal hell. They're even in hell in this life. To be in hell for eternity for that evil, and doctors and nurses that carry such evil, they need to repent. And those murder machines where it takes place need to be destroyed. The evil that went on, and the evil of doctors and nurses carrying out such evil. What sort of a conscience have they got? Have they got a conscience? Oh, bye now.